Pleasure to see so many of you come and just listen in. I was telling Steve, this topic is catchy. It's quite emotive. I had several people share it back with me with question marks, can't wait. Anyway, and I think it really is very related to emotional intelligence. So I'll just say a little bit about myself for those who we may not have crossed paths. So I run a company that focuses on development of people. Primarily, we work with organizations to transform their uh, most important resource, that is talent, that is people, to be able to work better together through self-awareness. So we do a lot of assessments to drive self-awareness in organizations, through having candid and more open conversations, through we don't do the usual team building. We have team coaching sort of programs. We also help people recruit better by through the use of our assessments. And Profiles was started primarily as a psychometric assessment company about 11 years ago, and now has moved to develop training programs. And the last child to this group is digital learning. So we also have a Profiles Academy. And in the Profiles Academy, you can get various courses, both from globally accredited authors, such as Marshall Goldsmith and Adam Grant, and also from our own local experts, such as Derek Banga, Mary Mokindia, and a few others. So we are co-creating with authors here in Kenya, actually in East Africa, because we're also working with a few Tanzanians, because we also believe that, like there you go to Coursera, Udemy, on all these great platforms, there's a lot of content out there, but we do believe that we have a lot of professionals and a lot of people who have a lot of information that is localized and contextualized for our context, that can also deliver and empower us in our various spheres. So our sweet spot is in, new managers moving on up to leadership. But we, as I said, we span the whole area of talent development. We also glad to hear that someone got certified on emotional intelligence, but we do also certify in emotional intelligence. I need to have sharing rights, Steve. And we run a certification 3 times a month from a company that is based in Australia, that I like to say have dedicated their whole researchers work. Can I call it research? Gosh, I hope today is not the day my words disappear and I need to talk so much. So let me share the poster. Just give me a minute. So if you are interested, for example, if you're a coach or a training consultant, or basically if you are an OD consultant, I don't know if you can see my screen, or even a human resource practitioner, we offer this certification for $1,500. And basically, you become part of what we call the Genos tribe of people committed and dedicated to developing emotionally intelligent places. So this could be workplaces. We have associates who work with us. We have about 120 associates who work with us, both in Kenya, Tanzania, and part of Northern Africa. And some of them are teachers, so they've dedicated themselves in trying to pass on this skill to schools. But a lot of us work in the workplace. And then for me, I give these talks everywhere. Workplace, I give talks. I mean, this has been a forum. I enjoyed giving a talk the last time. I give to teens, I give to parents, I visit schools, and it is a foundational skill for me. And I think I have learned that it's one of the things that I know right now is a buzzword. If you Google emotional intelligence, if you look at anything to talk about the future world of work, emotional intelligence is everywhere. And they say that with the advent of AI, emotional intelligence is becoming even more important, because it means that we're going to be having to be dealing a lot more with people. Before we could hide behind the machines, but now the machines are going away. So now you're going to be left facing your colleague and trying to figure out how to navigate conversations together as we do what we are calling creative and critical thinking, problem solving. So if you look at all those skills, and especially for your children, the skills that are not going anywhere, it is those particular foundational skills that sometimes we never paid attention to. And with the advent of AI, they become even more important. We also have an AI community, should you want to join. It's just a place where we give exclusive insights on emotional intelligence. We ran a few short webinars on the topic of EI. And this is if you would like to join that community. I think Liz is on this platform, so she's going to put the link on the chat, and then you can be able to click and then join. So it's not a group, it's a broadcast channel. So you receive the information. You do not have to see everyone who's in that particular group. So the topic, emotional intelligence and drama. And why drama? Maybe someone can write on the chat some of the recent dramas they have had. And perhaps we could start from there. So what are some of the things you would categorize as drama? Yeah. As we start this topic. For you, what would those be? What are right now when we said the dramas of life, what was that for you? Yeah. For me, the dramas of life right now is my 16-year-old son and trying to navigate that thin line between um, telling him, yeah, okay, what to do, and us guys fighting about many things about his performance. So I can see Stacy says in-law drama, yeah, for sure, for sure. And then someone says outbursts of anger, especially to my children for small mistakes they've done. Um, Gen X versus Gen Z. Now there's Gen Alphas as well. Nanny problems. Oh my goodness. Drama, nanny problems, shouting at workers. Life is always uncertain. Faith, obviously, there's a lot of anxiety coming there. Black tax. Yeah, we always hit with black tax. Woy, 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 woy. Feeling distance from a spouse. Yeah. Yeah, I know that one. That one I know. That one we can even sit and have coffee. We talk about it for a long time. Drama of life, handling my life, handling parenting. Thank you for sharing that. And if you think of any more, you can share more, because I'm gonna be just basically taking some of the things you're sharing here and using them as some of my stories. I can also see here co-parenting drama, overprotective. I think, gosh, me, I'm an overprotective mother. Having my teens challenge each other. So I mean, everything is drama. And sometimes, the thing that always amuses me is that, when you start talking about your drama, because we all have drama, someone else might share their drama and like, what? And yeah, my drama, okay, I know it's big, but my God, your drama, without being insensitive, so to speak, especially to our friends. So why this topic, and why are we talking about emotional intelligence and what it has to do with drama and who we are as people? So I'll give you a story. There was this young girl one time, and she was sent to the river to fetch water by her mom, of course. But of course, she wanted to play with her friends. Do you remember that girl? And here, the river to fetch water could be many things. It could be she was sent to wash dishes, or it could be that she was told to do something that she really didn't want. She wanted to do something else. And in her quest to go to fetch water, of course, she didn't bring enough water, or she absent-mindedly tripped and fell, and the water poured. Maybe she broke whatever she was fetching the water with, and then she had to go back and fetch more water. And so she wasted a lot of time trying to get the water. And when she got there, maybe the water was now dirty, so she got quarreled by her her parents or her mother, and she got into a bad mood. And then when she's in that bad mood, the drama is still continuing now. She tells the mother that, I mean, in her mind, she's not telling the mother. She's thinking, mom, by the way, you should be very grateful I even went to fetch that water because I didn't even want to do it in the first place. I should have been somewhere else in the first place. And the mother, of course, is quarreling her and is saying, you're always like this. You're always absent-minded. Every single time I send you, you do this, you don't bring in the water. So what would you say was the problem there? Yeah, when you think about that girl or that young boy, and we can all identify with the young girl and with the young boy, what do you think the problem for the young girl and the young boy was? And then what do you think the problem for the mother was? And both of them, it always boils down to a lack of self-awareness. Yeah. So for the daughter or the boy, and for them, it's really not their fault because at the stage of life of growing, we grow in self-awareness. We are very limited in the way that we perceive the world. So and we are very, very basic with what makes us happy. And especially if we are not taught, if we're not intentionally taught. So a lack of awareness that, I mean, I have been sent for a reason and I need to do this task well. If I do this task well, it means perhaps I might have time to do the other things that I wanted to do better. And for the mother is not being aware that the way that children grow up, and we cannot blame ourselves. I am that kind of mother. I remember what my firstborn went through and what my lastborn has gone through, two totally different worlds. And I can't blame myself because I keep saying I didn't know better. Yeah. I think my firstborn can talk about the Mwiko a lot more times. And a lot of that angst towards him was also because of how stretched I was as a mother, as a businesswoman, as someone mentioned, distance from spouse, also problems. So I could never really process adequately what situations really meant. And I start with that story because a friend of mine posted um, last week. He's called Derek Banga, and he has a course for us on the Profiles Digital Academy. He talks about personal branding. And if you look him up, Derek Banga on LinkedIn, he posted something and he said, a certain professor told a gentleman, part of his research work, told him that I want you to look at this dead fish. Yeah. And the guy, of course, looked at the dead fish. And when he came back, he told him, I've looked at the dead fish. And then the professor told him, no, 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 I want you to go and look at it again. And then he went again and he looked at the dead fish again. Then he came back and then the professor said, no, I know you said you've looked at the dead fish, but I need you to go and look at it again. So basically, he was trying to teach him and tell him that things are not always as they seem. And if you go to his post, he really explains for me the power or the intention behind emotional intelligence. And he says, think about a time when you were frustrated at work. And here we look at a manager managing, I mean, that's the area where his work is. We look at a manager managing a young man, for instance, or even a young woman. And this person is not delivering on his job. And so he gets very frustrated. And so he goes to his coach and says, these people are frustrating me. I mean, they're not doing the work well, and I'm getting very frustrated, and we're wasting time. And then the coach tells him, is that really the reason why you are frustrated? And he says, yeah, it's because they are inadequate. And again asks why. And then the why does it matter so much for you? Because if they don't do the work, we will not meet our KPIs, we will not meet our objectives. Why? Why does it matter to you if we don't meet our objectives? And then the real issue surfaces, because if we don't meet our objectives, I'm going to look bad. So at the end of the day, the frustration is not the real issue is the emotion behind how I will look yeah, when this thing is not done. And so because I haven't really looked internally or deeply enough to identify the correct emotion that I should be responding to, then I end up responding to the surface emotions, which is this frustration. And if I don't want to look bad, then what are the other avenues or the other things that I can then take? There's a course we do called NLP, and one of the questions it begs us to ask is, do you understand that your view of the world is not necessarily the correct view of the world? Anyway, I digress. So, what is emotional intelligence? It is the capacity to work with our emotions and to use them to be able to achieve or what we want instead of being driven by them. At the workplace, we say it's the, not even at the workplace, my working definition of emotional intelligence is it is the ability to perceive, to first be aware of the emotion, so to recognize it, and then to understand it. So that's also really, really important. Where does it come from? And then to be able to express it. So there's a whole breadth around emotional intelligence that we don't speak about. When people talk about EI, it's usually around managing emotions, being able to put them in check. For example, this infographic I asked Gamma to prepare for me says its ability to pause, reflect, and respond, which is a part of emotional intelligence. But there's also the part about being express our emotions effectively. And you can already see how, if we don't express our emotions effectively, how now that aids the drama, right? And then how are we able to self-manage ourselves? How are we able to also use the information that we get from emotions to get more holistic decisions, or to make more holistic decisions? And why does life feel so dramatic? There's so many things we've shared here, but it feels dramatic because we are first feeling creatures before we are ever thinking creatures. So we felt first before we thought. And a lot of us, myself included, we were taught to leave emotions at the door. In fact, it is so bad that if you're emotional, words like wacha umama are used. No, those things, stop being emotional. If you leave emotions out of this, we could actually talk. Yeah, because the emotions, we identify emotions as the behavior we are seeing. So the outburst of someone when they're angry is what we identify as the emotion. But really, that's the behavior. Me being angry, or rather, speaking harsh words to someone, that's a behavior. And we need to be very clear on that. So me throwing a plate at my husband because I cannot control myself anymore. I've reached the limit. That is a behavior, the throwing of the plate. It's not the emotion. Yeah. Me deciding to keep quiet because I've had enough and withdraw from a conversation, that is a behavior. It is not the emotion. So first and foremost, we must separate those two. There are the behaviors that we exhibit because of the emotions that we feel. And when we do that, then we can begin to start understanding what emotions really are. Yeah. And we can start understanding why we should never tell someone to stop being emotional. What you need to tell them is stop talking loudly, or to tell them, stop being so insensitive with the words that you're using, or please speak. I need to understand what you're saying. That's the behavior that we're addressing, not the emotion. So emotions such as anger, they push us to behave in a certain way. We react in a certain way. Emotions such as fear push us to behave in a certain way. And what we see is the behavior that comes with that emotion. So as I'm speaking and something comes, something comes into your mind and you want to share it, please do, because I have the chat open and I can respond even as I go ahead. So now that we have been able to separate the behaviors that we see and the emotions that we feel, we sometimes then, when we see people behaving in a certain way, driven by a certain emotion, we are looking at them through what we call our logical brain. Our logical brain being the front part of our brain, which uses logic to arrive at conclusions. So when someone does something without thinking, it means usually they have bypassed that logical brain. And most of the time, by the way, in most of our daily actions, we bypass our logical brain very, very many times, especially for tasks that or habits that we have already ingrained in ourselves. We don't even think about it. Our body naturally knows what. And that's why I think when they talk about your habits, it is so important to be able to grow that self-awareness and watch what you do and how you react. So emotions arrive before logic. We feel first. So when you feel, your body feels, it then judges from that feeling whether this is something that is going to be useful for me or whether it is something that is not useful for me. So basically, your body's process is protecting you, so to speak, because in the olden days, because we're not that evolved, when we would encounter an event, say, for example, I see a lion, it is the emotional brain that sends a message that we are under attack, threat. And what do? We fight, we flee, or at times we freeze. We bypass the logical brain. Imagine if you're facing a lion and then you start thinking, okay, so fine, does this lion look bad? Does it look like it really wants to attack me? Do you think if I started climbing this tree, it's going to attack me? That's not how it works. Everything is bypassed. The body is very efficient. It makes you either run, freeze, or fight whatever it is that you're getting. And that's why sometimes when you encounter something really difficult, you can't even remember doing some of those things. For example, I remember when we had the clashes for the Gen Z, and some of my friends, as old as we are, were caught in town with the tear gas. They just say some found themselves in Hurlingham. How they got there, they don't know. Others found themselves beneath culverts. How they got there, they don't know. Your body just reacts. And it's the same thing even when you're experiencing an emotion right now. You are more reacting than you are first thinking about which emotion am I experiencing to respond to it. So I can even ask, no, Judith said you can't hear. Can you hear me, Steve? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So Judith, I think someone should just type to her and tell her to check her earphones. So if I asked you right now, today, to think throughout the day, what emotions have you experienced? And when we experience very strong emotions, and especially if we haven't had time to sit with them and really analyze how we'll react to them, we can end up doing things like say things we deeply regret. We can overreact. We can also clam up and not talk, and we can misread each other and misunderstand each other because we are not taking the time to understand this emotion. And whenever now we come into drama, the world of drama, and for example, I meet Steve and I don't like him. I usually give this example. Imagine you're walking down a corridor and you see someone you don't like. What's the first thing you think of doing? For me, I just change direction. In fact, my body's on that changes direction. I don't even know that it has changed. I'm like, I just do not want to deal with this right now. And maybe that's the time this guy is in a very good mood. He's like, hi, how are you? And maybe this person is the one who's bringing me my next job. He's the one who's giving me some really good information, but because of the emotion that I have felt, I decided to avoid him. So some of us, when we experience difficult emotions, especially during conflict, what do? We might withdraw. We avoid conflict entirely. Yeah. And someone said, yeah, I experience anger, my voice gets louder. It's true. And some of us react. We respond immediately without a filter. We say the first thing that comes into our minds and we tell it as it is. And we then say things like, me, I don't like sugarcoating things. Me, I just say it as it is. So if you are not willing to listen, something like that, uh, really oblivious to the effect that we are having on the other people, right? And then, of course, where do we want to be? We want to be in that stage where when we experience a different emotion, a difficult emotion, or any emotion for that matter, we're able to pause and reflect and then choose the response that we should have. There's a book, a very old book I was once given, and I think I've even shared it on this forum. It's called The Power of a Made Up Mind. And basically, this book talks about the way we can make our minds up. We can make up our minds about very many things in our lives, and it makes our lives much better. A lot of the energy we expend in our brain is spent between deciding. And as I'll show later on in the presentation, managing ourselves and managing our emotions is so important because without proper self-management, we then become unable to respond. This last thing that I'm talking about here, choosing your response. Because when we are stressed, when our bandwidth is reached, we are no longer capable of choosing. We just react. In fact, if you see a reactive society, they're very stressed. Think about when you don't have money. When money gets in, it pays the first bill that comes. It's difficult to think through at now I'm going to save this. No, the money checks in the first. All the debtors who are the loudest are the ones you pay. You're reacting when you're paying out that money, right? So the 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 more stressed we are, the more we're not guarding ourselves against that reaction, then the less we're able to do the choosing that we're talking about. So our um, goal is to cultivate the emotional pause. Now, I was talking about a book called The Power of a Made Up Mind. And as you know, I keep digressing, but it's because I'm just trying to weave stories. So, The Power of a Made Up Mind says that if you can make up your mind about several things that you encounter in your life, then you reduce that decision fatigue that keeps coming. And then you can then focus on things that really matter. I'll give you an example. We all know people here who pick out their clothes in the evening, yeah, before they have to do it in the morning. And what are they doing? They are ensuring that in the morning they have very few decisions so that they can then be able to have a more effective and efficient morning, right? So that's one of the things about a power of a made up mind. And I mean, there are others. I know a friend of mine who decided she was only going to wear white. She doesn't wear anything else. She wears white. She's tired. She got tired. And so whatever she puts on, it's white. It's white. It's long. It's either pants, a long t-shirt, white shoes. It's white. Yeah. So that decision fatigue goes. But that is also true for us guys making up our minds about situations that we encounter a lot of times. Yeah. So say for example, a child who's upset and looking at the way that you react and then intentionally practicing a different way to respond to this child, knowing that that is the better way or the most efficient way to do it. And then once you practice, with time it becomes second nature. But then you've made up your mind that this is the way that I'm going to be reacting when this happens, because it gives me time to have a pause between the stimulus and my reaction. And so there's a guy called Victor someone, Frankl, and this was his quote: between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose. So, and our power to choose is not always in the big things. It's actually in the little small things. And those small things compound. And if we are not careful, they're the ones that spiral us into that zone where we are no longer to be able to control our responses. And so drama just keeps growing and growing and growing. And so some of the questions that you can start asking yourselves is what am I feeling right now? So at this very moment, what are the emotions that you're feeling? And I asked a question earlier on. If I asked you to think through what are the emotions that you are feeling or that you have felt within today, are you able to name them? Yeah. And why do I react to emotions the way that I do? And it is important for us to note that it was called emotional intelligence. It was not called success intelligence. I think sometimes there's the only thing we associate emotional intelligence with is success. So, guys say, um, um, IQ gets you into the office, but EQ keeps you there, or EQ gets you promoted. But there's a reason that that happened, and it has a lot to do with the 6 competencies that I'm going to share with you. So the first thing about emotional intelligence, and this is about drama, is self-awareness. And in self-awareness, we have awareness of your emotions, awareness of your strengths and weaknesses, awareness of your personality. I don't know how many of you have have done personality assessments. Really important, because they're able to give you a description of self, both in the positive and in the negative, or in both ways. For example, a personality that will pride itself in being assertive, is the other side to that is being pushy, yeah, and being aggressive. And so they're really important in us giving us a language to describe ourselves. And then second part of that self-awareness is the impact of our actions on ourselves and on others. So here I like to give a story about you and your child, for those of you who have children, or even you in a discussion with someone. How many of you have talked to someone who's talking on their phone? I wish this was a class I was running, but when someone has their phone on their hand and they're using it, and you're giving them a story, and when you tell them, "Are you listening?" they always tell you, "Yes, I'm listening." And chances are they're probably hearing what you're saying. But this person on the phone is not aware of the impact their actions have on you. At some point, you might even stop telling the story. It becomes very frustrating. When I do this in class, people get very frustrated. Some even want to slap that other person. But I, who's on the phone, I'm saying I'm hearing you, yes, and I can hear the story, yes, but my actions and the impact my actions have of you, that I'm not aware of. And so sometimes we might be self-aware. Like I might say, I'm a very strong-headed woman. And so therefore, give it to me straight. Or today I was talking to one of my friends, and she was saying, I state things, and I have realized whenever I state them, I'm waiting for feedback, but no one gives me feedback. Do you get? So that is the impact of myself on others. So when I ask, why don't people give me feedback, the first reason is yourself. You're not someone we can give feedback. Yeah. But we never own that part. We own the part for being straightforward and direct. But then when others are not giving feedback, because we are so used to giving feedback, we're wondering, why aren't others giving us feedback? But it's because our very personality, the way that we are wired, makes others feel like our statements are full stops. Nothing else can be said after that. So now she was saying, when I asked the team, and later on I learned that whenever I speak, it's like a matter of fact, moving on. Yeah. And she's like, no, but I want your feedback. But the tone of voice that is used. So do you understand your tone of voice? Do you understand the facial expressions? Has someone ever described your face to you? My husband used to tell me that I look like I am. In Kikuyu, we say nyira. It means I'm dharauing him when I'm speaking. And I'm like, but I'm not. But apparently that was my game face when we were arguing. So for him, he was reading that I am ridiculing whatever it is that he's saying. And it took me some time. I we used to fight with him a lot. It took me some time to even take that feedback. I thought he was being ridiculous. And I thought he was being very unfair to my face, actually. So I would continue on with the banter until now, much later on, getting the same feedback from others. You look like we can't approach you. You look like no nonsense. So we're a bit scared to be with you. And so if your end result then is being able to be approachable or to get feedback from others, how are you as a person impacting on that ability? Same to people not being able to read you because you don't speak much, you don't express yourself. So think if I don't know what you're thinking, I know, like when I was dating my husband, of course, I would expect he would imagine I want to be taken out, I want flowers. And when they refuse to come, I would nuna and move on, and then we'd have another argument. So I was not expressing myself and saying what I wanted. So the impact of my action is keeping quiet and expecting that the other person knows what I'm saying. So this creates conflict, and then which now escalates to something else. When we teach about parenting, we sometimes expect our children to know uh, things, but who taught them? You know, who has taught them? If you look back and see how much time have you spent teaching your children the way you expect them to be. Yeah. A lot of the times we don't. We teach them through reaction. They do that. Why are you doing that? Have you ever seen anyone in this family doing that? Yeah? But we've never sat down and taken the time to take them through what we require as a family. We assume it comes naturally, but and guilty is charged. But they are children. So they learn through our correction. As guys always the way they learn is correction, correction. Who told you to do that? Sometimes I will be like, but then this cupboard, don't open it. No one should ever touch it. But then this, don't this. We will give those instructions. But what about just being, right? How many times do we sit with our children and teach them? We're expecting they're going to be taught in Sunday school. They're going to be taught in their in the primary schools, wherever they are. And when they bring something that's a bit or maybe when they feel home is a safe place for us to be, and we then react towards them, right? So what understanding how your actions have also impact on your kids, yeah, those ones who are fortunate enough to have them as small, those are questions to ask yourself. And for all of us who are have big kids, that's a whole new different dynamic now, because first, some of them are not even in the house, and there's so many other things. Yeah. So what is the impact of our actions, of ourselves on others? What is the story we keep creating about ourselves? If you listen to yourself long enough, you'll see the story you create about yourself. And I'm focusing here on the self because self is the first place you can control. When they put about the circle of influence, they don't put others inside there. They put you, your attitude, your emotions, your own personal environment. The others are in the circle of influence, right? And if we are aware or enough about ourselves, in the circle of influence, we can actually make great strides. We can do a lot and influence others to have the mood that we want them to have. But first, we must understand ourselves and the mood that we are having. So one of the things under self-awareness, and I can see there's someone really drawing nice things on my presentation, is understanding emotions for what they are. I share this wheel over here because it's a wheel I like using, and maybe I have shared it in this forum before. When we're in coaching, and people will use a lot of words to describe what they're currently feeling. And it helps sometimes to have wheels like this because it tells you sometimes where that emotion is coming from, and then you can see how you react to it. So in the office the other day, we were talking about getting overwhelmed. And getting overwhelmed, I'm sure most of you have felt overwhelmed at some time, or getting anxiety. Yeah, it's an emotion that we all feel a lot of the times. And it doesn't help when we stay there, like we just get anxious and anxious and anxious. And if it's a state that you're living in, then the first question to ask yourself is, do I need to see someone to help me through this anxiety? Because the truth is, a lot of us, myself, yourself, everyone here, we do need that help from time to time because we are so busy doing life, yeah, here, there, work, everything there, that we cannot unpack things ourselves. We need someone to help us unpack the things that we're going through. So give yourself that gift. But also understanding the emotions, and then the base emotion. And I like this wheel. It's a very simple wheel, but it has helped many of the people that I work with be able to, when they start describing things, ask themselves, what's really the base emotion here that is making me feel this way? And there are many wheels out there on the internet. There are even some that are focused only on the challenging emotions or the unpleasant emotions, and there are some focused on the positive emotions. So something like, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, before I didn't know it, I would just say, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I would be like, oh my God, I have so much to do. I'm feeling overwhelmed and I feel like I'm drowning. Until I realized it was the base emotion for being overwhelmed is fear. So it's a fear. What am I afraid of? Right? And that's the right question. What am I afraid of? And sometimes I would say I'm afraid that I might not finish this work. If I don't finish this work, we won't get paid. And if we don't get paid, so on and so forth. And then I can start analyzing that narrative. Is it true that if we don't get paid, that life will end? Yeah. If you think about right now, if something were to happen, something big happens to you, you really focus on that thing. The other day, someone very close to me got very sick. It was a very, very difficult time for all of us. And for those 2 months, nothing
I've been
else
operating on
mattered.
very little
Yeah.
sleep.
Nothing else mattered apart from this illness. So never mind that every day we had food to eat. Never mind that we had work to do. Never mind that our relatives and parents all came to support us through what we were going through. Never mind that I thank God that I had children who made it easier. Never mind all those things. Where was my focus? And it is so easy now. Think about it now in terms of that was something difficult, but think about it now in terms of your parenting. Yeah. And you have this child, and this is the one part of their life that is not working out. Yeah. What happens to you? What emotion comes from that? Yeah. And how narrow, we say difficult emotions, they narrow and limit our thinking. Never mind that this child is healthy and wholesome. Never mind that we are never really in control of everything that happens. And, we like to say God is in control and then we proceed to control things for him. Never mind all those things that the pastor said in church. But this particular child, this and this is happening. Or we are having an argument either with our significant others, or our business has such a heavy toll on us. It's all we're focusing on. Again, our kids are still there with us. How much time are we paying, or are we even paying attention to them? So some of those things are just brought about by an awareness and by the intentional cultivation, which takes time. And I think one of the things that stops us from taking the time to do that intentional cultivation is thinking that we are wasting time, but we're not wasting time. In fact, immediately we're able to have moments of this self-reflection. The clarity that we get allows us to move even further and more intentionally. So you do control the thoughts that follow an emotion. You do the way that you speak or say, or how you react to an emotion, as long as you are aware of that emotion. So learning to name your emotions is the first thing that I would say you need to start. So someone here has said, how about when you express your needs to your spouse over and over and over again and they don't pay attention? It's frustrating to keep repeating oneself and trying to keep calm while recounting something for the umpteenth time. So that's a very good question, and there are very many ways to look at it. But there's an underlying thing there. Why are you repeating yourself, repeating yourself about something? So I would invite now, use the dead fish analogy to analyze that situation. Why are you repeating yourself? And do a self-reflection. What is it? What is the outcome that you desire? One of the things, and Steve told me, please share as much as you can about the life that you've also lived, in the hope that I hope someone here maybe might identify with it and it might help them. Is my husband is a I mean time is a suggestion to him. You suggest tomorrow, and you suggest 10 o'clock. You don't say 10 o'clock. I don't know. You suggest the time. So we used to go to travel. We used to go to our shags in Mombasa every December. And so for me, because I had small children, I preferred to have them get onto the car at 5 a.m. so that at least we could sleep, like 3, 4 hours before they wake up. And, I have to start doing all that work and everything. And so we'd agree 5 a.m. and that we would leave. But 5 a.m., he would want to sleep in to 6 a.m. And then from 6 a.m., he would say there's an emergency SMS that has come in. He would leave the house at 7 a.m. And then I'd be left there, By the time he's coming back, of course, you can imagine. I don't know what emotion you want to give me, but you can really imagine where I was. And I repeated it and I repeated it and I repeated it. When I discovered his personality and I discovered my personality, and who he is, he flows with the time. We did personality assessment. And who am I? I push and I'm very aggressive. I like things happening, bam, 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 bam. It made a world of a difference because I was able to be empathetic and to understand his version of events. His version of events is we will get to Mombasa. Yeah. My version of events is we need to get to Mombasa by 12 o'clock. Right. So I had a choice. We always have a choice. But when I was a younger bride, I loved to blame him for things, and that's the truth. So if we're not going to Mombasa by 12 o'clock, I really wanted to say it was his fault. Because never mind that we'll still get to Mombasa, yeah? But for me, we did not get to Mombasa at 12 o'clock. So it would then start another fight about us guys leaving and really starting to ask myself, what is the desired outcome I want? And in fact, I remember sitting and making a decision and saying, I just want to have a happy family. I just want to have a happy drive from Nairobi to Mombasa. Now, I have two choices. I can drive myself, and then he can come whenever he wants to, but I wanted the family aspect. And so decided that, um, his time is his time. What can I do? So whenever he would leave, I would also leave. We would work, make sure everything is set. When he was ready to come home and take us, we would both come home, and I'd have felt like, I've done something, and we'd pick the kids together and would carry all sorts of things, and we would first and foremost, we had started off on the right footing this time. So we were not fighting about whether or not he didn't come on time, blah, 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 blah. We were starting the journey together at that point. And then the journeys became a lot better, right? And I remember one of the other things I can share about my early married life is that I had a lot going on for me. I I had a career that was still going on. Yeah. I had kids. I had I had friends, but my whole life was centered on this man. Everything about me was centered on this man. So sometimes I'm just saying that we need to take a step back, yeah, and first define the outcome of what we want. What do you want for a marriage, right? Because at the end of the day, as much as we don't like to admit it, we do have a choice. You do have a choice. It might not be a simple thing to carry out the wishes or to carry out or to do something about your situation. I know that, and I'm not saying that all of us are in the same boat. But once we are aware of the choices that we have, we do make better choices moving forward. And that only comes from self-awareness, understanding ourselves, understanding our choices, understanding even the things, doing that whole sheet sometimes of where am I, and doing that often. Where am I at? What are the things that are going on in my life? When I feel under emotional awareness, when I start feeling that I'm getting too negative, the anxiety is really eating me up, and I can tell because start becoming snappy at everyone. I become snappy at my children, and I can tell I'm reaching my limit, yeah, of um, of bandwidth, and now I'm reacting. I have stopped responding. I'm reacting. It is a sign to me, not that the other people are wrong, that I myself am not regulating well. And so, what are the things that I need to do to be able to regulate better and go back into balance? Yeah. Because whenever we are not in balance, we tend to then react. So, that is the first thing, awareness of self, really understanding, and that is the one area, the deeper you go into it, I think the better the choices that you make. They say that if you ask people about self-awareness, they will tell you they are self-aware about 85 percent of the people will tell you they are self-aware. But when you really, really, really ask, or you really do a test to find out how many people are self-aware, you find it's about 10 to 15% of the people that are self-aware, because self-awareness in itself is a lot of hard work. And it is learning to understand the parts of you that are not so good and the parts of you that are great, that they're beautiful, yeah? And taking ownership for both of them. I have people who come and tell me, I can't say that about myself because it would be bragging. That again is a lack of self-awareness. So refusing to take credit or accept things that you're really great at, it's also a lack of self-awareness. And I also have the same people on the other side who everything about them is great. But when you start talking about the impact of the things that are not so great, then they're like, that's on me. Again, that's a lack of self-awareness. So in every situation, and especially now I'm talking about the drama we can control, the drama you can't control, and you have to know the difference. The drama that we can control, we have to remember that we are also contributing to it. And the more you blame other people for that drama, the less of a solution you will get. Yeah. So can we raise our level of self-awareness? Definitely. Definitely we can. We can keep raising it. We can keep growing with it. It takes time, just like everything else, but you can grow your level of self-awareness. If you want to do personality assessments, you can contact us. I think our contacts have been put down there. But there are also there are some free versions. Might not be as reliable, but there are some free versions that can get you started on self-awareness. So I think you can see LM there, and she's posting on some of the things that I'm talking about. And so what's the next thing around emotional intelligence and drama? So it's also an awareness of others. Awareness of others. Someone said, what about people who are toxic? Yeah, it's awareness of people who are toxic. But then there's a caveat there. If you really don't know someone, don't label them toxic. If you have a difference of opinion, that is not a reason to call someone else toxic. And in awareness of others, it really asks us to take the time to understand others. Like the way we were told to walk a mile in someone's shoes, right? Or the way that Jesus said of the Samaritan woman who was caught and said, if you have no sin, be the first to throw the stone. Yeah. Because we rarely take the time to really empathize. And by empathize here, it doesn't mean listening into one side of the story and trying to fix it. That is not empathy. Empathy is really listening to understand. How do you tell that you are growing in your skill of empathy? When you start being able to tell someone, I sense that you're not happy, and they actually agree with you, it means that you are noticing an emotion in them accurately. So even when you, for example, are getting to a point of making an opinion about someone, is thinking, higher, maybe I'm seeing this the wrong way. Maybe what I should be asking myself is, what does this other person think of this problem? And empathy for me is a tool. I find empathy as a tool to find out what people are really thinking. I think I wrote an article and said, empathy is like a lighthouse in a storm. When there's a storm, we all just want, take our boats, row, 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 go where. So when there's a storm, you're either leaning you're either leaning into the conflict, or you're, on the outskirts of the storm, running away from the storm. But empathy is like a light. Because if you really sit and listen, and you're able to hold yourself enough to listen to the version of events of someone else without interrupting, without judging it, you start to really understand the story. And that's where, after all that effort, you can have the right to call someone toxic, because now you really understand them, right? So before we condemn others, it is, have we taken the time to understand them? How empathy in no way talks about letting people get away with bad behavior. In fact, we listen to understand whether this is a case of intentional, maybe negligence, or intentional wrongdoing. Because when we really listen to people, we can understand better and say, huyu mtu si mpoa, or enyewe, I hadn't seen this from that point of view, or oh, kumbe there were other things in play here. But then we rarely get to that point of that deep listening. When someone starts speaking, the first thing we want to do is, in fact, as they're speaking, we have already responded in our heads. There's a famous quote that says, we speak, whenever someone else is speaking, we are listening to speak back. But here the art is just really deeply listening. And it is a skill. It's a skill that you learn. One of the people, same girl I was talking to, says for her, it is intentionally telling everyone, I am not speaking right now. I'm just listening. And, curbing your tongue either way and listening to the full story. And this helps you understand even when others really need your support. It helps you start to understand the different personalities and the way that they see the world, which is different from you. As like I said, my husband, for him, deadlines are suggestions, and that's his personality. And as much as I want to try to change him and beat him with that, I don't know what, for him to just see deadlines as a deadline, it doesn't come naturally to him. But for him, he asks me, where are you going? Where are you running to? Who's chasing you? Yeah. This world, Vickie, is on its own rhythm. Those are the words that he uses for me. And we can't see that. And it doesn't mean because we cannot see eye to eye, we cannot use these things to our own advantage to be able to govern our relationship. I know where I'm strong at. I know where he's strong at. And that's what we do. So we begin to look at others through that lens of empathy. And there's a very nice video by Brené Brown, Empathy and Connection, which I would urge you all to watch. And it just really talks about the four stages of empathy, being taking the perspective of the other person to be their truth. Not easy. So when my husband decides, for example, that he wants to, I don't know, maybe he wants to buy a piece of land somewhere, I don't know. And he really, really thinks that's the right thing to do. And I'm telling him, no, 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 that's a waste of our money. That's his perspective and that's his truth, right? And the more that I come to him, if you don't know what you're doing, or I think we should do this, and I think you're not listening to me or not taking into my considerations, I should be asking him, okay, now tell me why. And really sitting down, okay, and this and this. Then you can begin to really understand where am I going to go with this. First, he feels listened to. Yeah. And then secondly, I have enough information now to actually make my case because I know what he's thinking. And maybe even perhaps his thought process is actually really, really good. So that deep listening and awareness of others is very important in reducing the drama in our lives. It is very important in parenting as well, because we also make a lot of assumptions about our children. And indeed we do. And we then rarely give them time to express themselves truly. The other day, true story, my son, the one I'm telling you now, the one that he's the one we are sitting with now, trying to talk. And then he casually tells me, mommy, by the way, when you're in the sitting room, I prefer to get out the back door and then go to the kitchen and come in because I don't want you to call me. Why? Because we had reached that place where all I was talking about was his grades, his grades, his grades, his grades. It was, to him, he just didn't want to hear about it. And for me, it was the only thing that was in my mind. I was like, oh my boy, this boy needs to perform well. So anytime I see him, I swear the only thing I saw was grades. Anywhere you pass, I'm like, but then why are you reading? You're just running up and down. Anytime. And he came and after we had that conversation is when I caught myself like, oh my goodness, I'm actually doing the thing again. Because now when I fix on something, I lock onto it and you can't move me here or there. Of course, there's the other side of to that where you can let a kid do what they want. Again, that's not so good. And the whole intention of all this conversation is to find the balance. So, but really sitting down and listening to him and him telling me, I feel that you're not listening to me. I'm trying to tell you what is really going on, but you're not listening to me. And then saying, okay, fine, you talk. And so he lays the whole lay of the land. That means that for me, a very busy mother, I have many things to do. I'm trying to stop myself and be present for this conversation. Because if you're not present for the conversation, you're going to miss so much of what he is actually telling you. Yeah. So as parents, we are very, very busy and we feel that we are wasting time, some of the time. I dare you tonight or tomorrow, if you're a parent, just watch the times you brush aside your children. Yeah. Don't blame yourself. Just watch it like you're watching a soap opera of yourself and your children. Yeah. How you go about doing things in the house and see how we don't even think about it. We blue tick them with our phone. We are talking to our significant others sometimes, or we are cooking and as they're talking and we are thinking that we are listening to them. We're not really paying attention. So we're not looking at them in the eye to signal that I'm here and I'm present for you at this particular moment. And please, parents, don't think I'm saying they're getting away with anything. You're listening to them. So the third thing is about being able to express ourselves effectively. And there's a picture here I saw on LinkedIn today, where I think a parent was yelling at a child, and then you see a fist coming out of the mouth, hitting that child. And there was also, I think that caption was saying, children learn anger from us or something like that. Children need to understand that emotions are there, and we need to teach them that they are good things. And we need then to teach them to also effectively express these emotions. And I think that's where most of our problems come from, because we're not taught to effectively express our emotions. So even in fact, we are not even taught to feel our emotions. Yeah, like I'm saying, the emotion was given the label of the behavior, so all of them were mixed up into one thing. And so when we were angry, the behaviors that we saw that were angry were mixed up with anger. But anger, the emotion, is really, it has wisdom. It has nothing to do with anything. It just happened because God put it there for a reason. It's giving us a message. And when you're angry, or even as someone has said, I am a peacemaker in my personality. Yes. And even the fact that we withdraw sometimes when certain things happen rather than confront also teaches kids something. Yeah. So the thing here is, how do you have authentic conversations? How do you speak what needs to be spoken, but in a manner that is likely to bring out the desired income? So Steve Covey has a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the most important behavior in that book is begin with the end in mind. If I know I'm going to have a difficult conversation about something, the first place to always start is, what do I want to achieve from this conversation? I want to have a conversation with my child about performance, for example. So what do I want to achieve out of this conversation? I want us to have a roadmap that is effective, that will enable this child to plug into the learning. But then how do I need to deliver that? Yeah. There are so many courses, short courses on the art of giving and receiving feedback. And if you can anchor feedback onto purpose, the why is so important. Why are we having this conversation? If it's your child, what is the purpose? What do we hope to achieve out of this conversation? Usually we start with the what. Every day you wake up late. Every time I leave this house, you children are just sleeping. Yeah, you're just sleeping all the time. Huh? But why? Why should we not sleep? Why has that been articulated? Or we should just wake up because, waking up is what we are supposed to do. And then after we wake up, what do we do? Why should we wake up? Yeah. Then the kids will probably say, but mom, there's nothing, or dad, there's nothing to do around here all the time. Yeah. Or things like that. Why? What's the outcome? Why do we want them to wake up early? Why do we want them to do this? Why do we? So purpose is a very big driver of action when we know why. I remember this forum where I shared one time. I said that we would go to Mombasa, but I wasn't sure if we would make it because we didn't have money. And so we needed to save all the money we could get. And funny thing is, my children started switching off lights, in the house. Why? Because we couldn't afford to have a high electricity bill just in case we didn't make it for our holiday and not stay in our house and stay somewhere else. So that was a very, very strong why. you know. If we don't, it even matter. The other ones who picked and say, by the way, easy steamer, bill kikuja kubwa, we may not go. So they used to check themselves and put off the lights. Of course, when we came back, I don't know about the light situation, but whys are very important. So when you're having effective conversations, whether it's with your significant others, whether it's with your children, I think the first thing you want to ask yourself is why? What is the outcome that I want out of this? And then what is the most effective way to deliver this message or to have this conversation? And that way, then we are removing ourselves from creating that drama. In fact, you can even go further and say, what of this conversation, when it is said, will trigger me? And then this conversation will leave the part where it is being productive and move directly and into unproductive zone, where now the emotions start spandying. Me, I keep quiet and I let other people talk. I say, you know what you want is okay. If I don't speak about my needs, that is also not effectively communicating. So if you don't speak up about what you want and you expect other people to know what you need, that is not being effective. And if this is something that you need help in, again, there are coaches out there, there are therapists out there, there are also online courses on how to communicate effectively with your spouse. And even for children, why don't they speak up? They don't speak up because first and foremost, they don't feel safe. Why don't they feel safe? So ask you, let's go back to the beginning. Self-awareness. How do I contribute to my children not feeling safe with sharing with me information? Remember, we're in a very different age from our children. As guys wash, okay, at least for me, I'm Gen X. So I was sheltered. I mean, all we had was a TV that started from 5 and it was shut down by 11. And then where we played was pretty much secluded. And so we didn't have all this information that's going in and out, in and out, in and out. So when we refuse to acknowledge that there are certain things that our children are aware of, that's a lack of self-awareness right now, or awareness of others and of our children. And those things sometimes not labeling them good or bad, but just listening through and then getting that feedback back. Remember, communication is always two ways. It is not one way. And if you only speak to your child and they never speak back and tell you what they're thinking, you have not communicated. Yeah. You've just delivered a sermon or you've delivered a speech, but you've not communicated. And communicating effectively says two ways. The other part to know is that the response you receive from your communication is how you communicated. So when I tell someone, I want you to tomorrow when you wake up, I want you to make sure that your small brother is fed, and then I also want you to make sure that the house is clean. Then tomorrow, I find the small brother was not fed, and then, of course, the house was not clean. So I didn't communicate. I know you may want to blame the child, but I, the parent, have not communicated properly. I have not sat down to ensure that this person understands what that means. We have not sat down and analyzed what it actually means to wake up early to do the child. And for parents who have managed to do this, they have taken the time. Remember, taking the time to also prepare your children and understanding that they are kids. So I have seen some comments here. There's one here about, I am now learning to regulate my emotions. I was in the situation that got me so worked up and I punched the wall. I am now nursing 2 sprained fingers and looking back. Okay, well done. Our emotions they are so powerful. They are so powerful, and God created them that way because they push us. Remember, they were designed to protect us. Yeah. In those days, it's just that now we don't know the boundary. I think sometimes we are so safe that now we have to look for other things that are dangerous, and then we react in the same way. You know what I want to say? So communicating effectively, and it's an art. Connecting with others emotionally. How do you connect with others emotionally and with vulnerability? Our egos are very interesting things, and I think we talk about egos a lot. We don't want to say our needs. Why? Because we will look weak, or I don't even know. This we don't want to share some of the things that we're going through. Again, why? The ego. But to connect with another human being means to be vulnerable. And if you ask me earlier on to define vulnerability, I would have defined it as weakness, a point where people can exploit. But I have learned that we are vulnerable every single days of our life. Just by getting children, you put yourself in a vulnerable situation. I mean, that was so vulnerability is actually another word for courage, because every time you act with courage, you actually have to be vulnerable. So connecting with others vulnerable. If you're talking about that distant spouse, it's because there's some level of vulnerability there that got lost. Yeah. The ability to to bear ourselves and to not withhold of ourselves to the other person. Now, it's not easy to cross that path, and I, more than any other person, know that. But the minute you start building walls, it's because you have chosen not to feel, yeah? And the minute you choose not to feel, that emotional connection goes. And emotions is what connects us as human beings. It's what will really connect me to my children. Seeing emotions with them, eliciting certain emotions. Remember, the memories they have are emotional memories. When you remember something, it's the emotion that comes first, not even the event. How you felt that determines whether it was a good feeling or not. It was a good event or not a good event. Yeah. So it is emotion and being able to elicit that emotion. For example, one of the things that after saying, understanding and saying, I want to have, and it's an intention, I really want to have a happy place that I go home to. I want to go home and be happy. I want to feel like my house is my refuge. I want to feel like it's the only place I want to be. And that means for everyone. And one of the things I learned from an older woman, we're having this conversation, is like, why don't you just be the love that you want to see in the relationships? And of course, I was like, now what does that mean? And we had a whole other conversation. And of course, I fought and fought and fought and fought and fought. But at the end of the day, you have to be the thing that you want to see, right? If you want to see love in your home, you have to be it. You have to be that love. And you have then to communicate that love vulnerably. For example, for me, it's telling my children I love them every day. And before that, I never used to tell them. I used to imagine that they know, for some reason that they will, by osmosis know that I love them. But, studies show that children who, when they are asked, do your parents love you? Say yes without a doubt. The biggest reason why they know is because their parents tell them. They tell them every day, I love you. And and they understand that, of course. And then there are other actions that show that you love them. Of course, you can't tell someone you love them and you manipulate them. But then there are other actions that show them that you love them. But that is communicating emotions to someone else. Yeah. And you're able to connect at that emotional level. So being authentic about our emotions, sharing them, removing those walls, even for our children, even for our big children, removing those ones, telling them, I'm afraid that if you go out, something will go wrong. That's why I don't want you to go out. Not, the people who go out are those bad children, very bad children. I don't know where they come from. That's not the reason why you don't want that child to go out. It's not that it is ungodly or something. It's because you're afraid. If you really think about it, it is driven by fear. And all of us parents know that emotion of fear for our kids. We don't know where they are. Sometimes we don't know what they're doing. And where does fear come from? It comes from the fact that we love them. Yeah. And we want the very best for them as well. So connecting those dots, I think, really helps us to really interrogate our relationships more, interrogate the decisions that we are making together with our children, and also express authentic emotions to them. I just want you to pass Moy, that's my son. Why? It's important for me, not even for you. For me, it's important that you pass. I think it makes my life easier. But when we sit down and think about it, and I'm like, by the way, even if he got like a B, or it's not the end of the world. In this future of where careers are, anyone can do anything, it's the beginning. So why am I here stressing myself. We've not even done the exam, and I've already started creating certain stories about his performance. So learning to analyze everything and put them properly in front of me, and also speak to the father, who, of course, now the father sees things from a distance. He's like, leave him alone. He's a child, And then now being able to work out that my version of events is not the way that the world works. Sometimes we get caught up in being so right. Anyway, I have digressed, but back to expansive decision thinking. These I have covered a little bit off when I talked about, when a child wants to go out and you're not naming the actual reason or fear or why you're not letting them go out. So expansive decision making, ask you need to ask yourself, what emotion am I feeling right now, right? And what is it driving me to do? So if what is my personality? If my personality is more in the steady zone, and I find someone, or I come and meet a significant other who is a bit aggressive, of course I'll retreat, and our interactions will be as such, because I feel the fear and I retreat. But what about my children? What does that communicate to them? You see, that's when you start thinking about expansive decision making. What do they feel, right? What about even the outcome of the way that then my home becomes? There are all those things. So what am I feeling, and what's the truth about my emotion? What are my values? Those are some of the things that if I ask you right now, what are your values? Will you think about them, or do you know what they are? Yeah. Can you write them down without a doubt and tell me, Vickie, these three are my top values? And we know what values are, but again, about only 10% to 15% of people have actually taken the time to not write down what your values are, right? Because that's a different exercise. Actually, what are my values? Number one, integrity. No, that one always comes first. And number two, I don't know what it is. And number three, I don't know what it is. So about values is more about examining your life to see what it is that the values that are governing your life, because there are values governing your life. And if you're not aware of those values, then there are decisions that you're making that are coming from that value system. So taking the time to also understand what are the values that are governing my life is also very important. Because then if I value, for example, commitment, and someone else does not value commitment, right there is a clash. And so we have to start having different conversations. So what are some of the things, the values that I want to see in my home, and how do I communicate those? What are the values that I want to see in my children? So you say, I want my children to learn to speak up. And then when they speak up in the house, there's a problem. So can we be consistent in the values we want to see in our children? Because those values then also govern the behaviors that we see in our children, right? And all those are questions that you can start asking, and then start making different decisions when it comes to decision making. How do you create win-win situations? Every time someone loses, someone is disgruntled, and so that is a potential area for drama, right? So how do we create desired win-win situations? We listen to others. We really start co-creating what the outcome, a shared outcome, really looks like, and for example, if I'm going to someone and they're not doing something, I'm just answering the question that the lady put over here, and I keep talking about it, then maybe it's time to co-create a different ending. So what do you see as your version of events? Okay, maybe this is what I want. So where can we meet halfway? That's a win-win situation. And maybe it starts with the question of purpose. Why should we even do this in the first place? Is there a reason for us to think about this particular part? And even more than that, the issue at hand, is it really significant? Or are there other things that are bothering you so hard that this issue is the only thing you have found that you have to hang on to prove a point? That's also us guys as spouses and as kids, as parents. Sometimes we pick one thing and we focus on it so hard, but it's not the real issue here. There are maybe a series of other things that have come. Self-management is the most important. And self-management is important because if we guard our boundaries internally and create that bandwidth internally, we're able to do all the other things we're talking about. We're able to be aware of others. We are able to be empathetic, listen. And when we are parenting, we are able to have the bandwidth to react, no, to respond, not to react. So life is full of pressures, and it will always be full of pressures. There'll be work pressure, there'll be financial pressure, there'll be maybe drama from even relationship pressure. So many pressures, yeah. And taking the time to sit and understand where are your limits, where are your stress limits. Beyond here, you're no longer an effective human being. By effective, I mean you're no longer able to control your temper. You're no longer able to respond effectively to the challenges that you're finding in life, because life will always throw for you challenges. But the question is, are you responding effectively to these challenges? There are many people in the world who are as busy as hell. They have even 5, 6 children, but they're balancing their lives. What are they doing different? And the thing is boundaries. And boundaries require you to say no to many things. And they require you to sit down and decide what is important and what is not important. Because the first person who crosses boundaries is not other people, but yourself. So if you can learn to identify where your boundaries are, and then understand that because you have set that boundary, it doesn't mean that your world is going to end. So for example, if you decide that, going out and being with your friends this many times, and it's something that you've done, it's very difficult then to say, I need to stop. Maybe I need to be going out maybe once a week. I don't need to really go out with them, because when I look at the effect of me being out and not sleeping well, this is what happens. If you don't sleep well, for instance, if you have little sleep, unfortunately, you will always react. Your moods are all over the place. No matter how much you like to say you're controlled, you are not controlled. You have to have adequate sleep. Not sleeping is not a trophy. And I think at this age, we know that the choices we make are ours. We can no longer blame our upbringing or our university days and so on. So sleep is a non-negotiable. And you must put a boundary around sleep. Because if you don't sleep enough, you cannot be a good parent. You cannot listen. You cannot be present. All those things you can do. Eating well is another one. Small things about our bodies. Our bodies, these temples, need to be taken care of, because they're the ones that are doing all these things for us. My mouth is speaking for me because the body system has been fed enough for it to talk at this particular time, right? So boundaries first to do with your own physical well-being. Whenever we talk about self-care, we think about spa and I don't know what else, but self-care begins with basic things, right? Begins with basic things that we should do for ourselves. Begins with basic things like taking a walk every other day for your body, releasing that stress. So other boundaries have to do with relationship boundaries, right? And then the thing about boundaries, especially when they are in relationships, I remember when I was, again, in my marriage, and we went to see a counselor when things got really, really thick. The counselor, first thing he told us is that you guys got married so young, you have just been navigating, this thing like, you're on a boat on River Yanda or something. The current comes, we navigate it like this. So we had never set boundaries with each other. And, today, I would have a boundary. Then tomorrow I don't have that boundary. So even my husband was confused. Is there a boundary or is there no boundary, right? So even for me, sometimes I'd get confused. Alas, yeah, so we did not set clear boundaries with each other. We did not communicate those boundaries. So one of the earlier things I learned was that when you set a boundary, it is also your responsibility to communicate that boundary with the other person and to ensure that it is understood the way it is meant to be understood. You could tell someone something like, I will be asleep by 9, and they hear something different. Whenever I sleep at 9, that means I don't want anyone to talk to me, blah, 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 and all that. So you have to communicate these boundaries in your relationships. You have to, people say, oh, I have to work late hours. that is a boundary that you have set for yourself, that you have to work late hours. And why is it a boundary? Because that working late hours has set a boundary for something else in your life, right? So it could be that I can only then be home 2 hours or 3 hours. That's the effect. So in all self-awareness, it is also knowing that we sometimes have boundaries that have been put that we're not aware of, yeah, that also affect some of the things you see here. So what boundaries do you need to set to preserve your bandwidth? Relationship boundaries, work boundaries. These are very important. And these then help you to have the necessary bandwidth to do the other things. And I think it is what powers us to be effective. It's what powers you to be consistent, to consistently show up as a positive person. You've met these people who you say, hey, that person is always smiling. Her, she's always happy. There's a lot of work going on behind that happiness. Yeah. The soft life, or the soft people, as we like call them, there is a lot of work they do behind that. Yeah. They have set serious boundaries around their time. So they're never, when you see someone moving from one meeting to another meeting, they're late, they're late, they're late, they're late. They are not setting time boundaries. So what happens? They're going to get stressed. You'll get stressed meeting, not having time management as part of your boundary setting. So, but I could speak about this all day, so I'll let it rest there. There is a lot online about self-management, so much, and there's a lot about also on mindfulness. So, what are some of the things I would say are emotional intelligence on in parenting? Remember that children are watching us. They watch us every day. They watch what we do. They learn a lot. So, are you self-aware about how the way you are living is having an impact on your children? Yeah. So first doing that audit, how do you model stress? Yeah. When you come home and you're under pressure, you tell them, today, no, mommy or daddy, I've had a hard day. Leave me alone. You go and I know just na ndugu yako. You're teaching them how to handle stress by just those few words you've said, right? Um, Resolving conflict. What have they seen? Yeah. Have they seen that you can have healthy disagreement? And also allowing them to disagree with you and you disagreeing with them healthily also helps them build relational skills. Have you taught them, or can you teach them about removing behavior from emotions? For example, my birthday was this weekend, and my son, that is in the next room, is listening to me, decided to spend it with his girlfriend. I really caught feelings. I really did, as a mother. So, and when he came, I was like, I was just saying, one day in a year, just one day in a year. And but the girlfriend is lovely, so it's not about her. But as mother, as man. So today in the morning when he called me, he was all happy. And I had the choice, to tell him, no, I'm okay. But I told him, but I know you had to go there, but as your mom, I really, really wanted you to spend time with me. It's expressing your feeling. And there's nothing wrong with an emotion, as long as you're not using it to manipulate the other person. So we talked about it for long. He said, okay, fine, I'll make it up to you. I'll buy you lunch. I said, fine. Yeah. But, we have expressed where we are, both of us, because it would mean that I would carry that thing. And at some point, I'd probably be telling the father, Barry's scared and love me anymore. Oh my goodness, it's going to reach a point where and so on and so forth. Anyway, I digress. So naming emotions, normalizing that emotional awareness. Kids being able to say, I'm overwhelmed when they're in school, and you being able to listen and tell them, listen, that's okay. It's a feeling. What do we do when we're overwhelmed? What are the healthy things that we can do? Because you're the first place that's teaching them to deal with these emotions. Yeah. Owning up to our errors. Yeah. So those are some of the things about emotional intelligence and parenting. Emotional intelligence for young adults. Young adults are, I think they're some of the people who really, really, really go through a lot of things. You can imagine when you're at that stage, you're trying to figure out who you are. uh your relationships, not just romantic ones. I mean, like my daughter comes home and she's upset because of a friend of hers who did, I don't know what to who, or said something about her. All those things, how do you normalize them? How do you listen to them? How do you help them not put so much value in clothes and things like that? It's about really sitting down and listening to them. Because at that point, remember what we said, they are reacting. Yeah, they don't have that particular awareness. They have to learn it from someone, that skill of being able to respond, not react. And some of the habits that I can leave here with you that are very basic but very important is noticing to name our emotions, catching them before they escalate, catching them before the drama. In fact, whenever you feel an emotion, it is said that you also feel it in your body, before even you understand the emotion itself. So you can feel anger in your body before your mind has even registered that you're angry. Your mind has named that emotion and said, oh my God, we are feeling angry. And really being able to notice these emotions early and then name them. When you say, I'm feeling frustrated here, is different from saying, I'm feeling hurt. So what are you exactly feeling? And then the other part about that is understanding, someone who's just shared with us vulnerably and said, I got angry and I punched a wall. So understanding also, what is my likely reaction? And remember what I said about the power of a made up mind. If this is my likely reaction, can I choose another reaction that I will be having so that I can respond? I'm not a person who used to take feedback very well. And immediately you start giving me feedback, I would start, but the word here that we like using is but. Someone has told you something, you say but. And then, and I remember during my 360 survey that was done, one of the feedback I got is that I don't take feedback very well. I'm not very effective in taking feedback. It was difficult. And it's something that I had to think through, what then will I do? But then one person told me, why don't you ask questions? Be curious. When people are giving you feedback, be curious. Okay, I hear you, but can you give me an example of what you mean when you tell me I'm not doing this and this and the other? Okay, so what would you rather see me do? So that's modeling curiosity. And with that, because one of the things is because I like being in control. If I ask people here, what is your need of control between 1 and a 5? Some will say one, I don't really need to be in control. Others will say 3. So me, I'm like at a 4, 5. So even that feedback, I want to be in control. So I'm using something else that puts me in control of the conversation, but it is healthy. I'm asking questions. And it's not easy, but it's the power of a made up mind. I've made up my mind that whenever I see feedback, because I know my natural reaction is defensiveness, and I start, putting myself, no, but have you considered, is to ask questions. And it helps me in 2 ways. It helps me understand where this person is coming from, interrogate that feedback, whether I actually, and not seem defensive. Because once you seem defensive, then people stop and they stop giving you feedback as well. So, what response do you want to give? Who do I want to be at this moment? And then for those times when, we lose it, and we will always lose it. We're human beings. There are times, you just get the better out of you. You yell at your child and you yell forever, and you call upon their ancestors as well. It's going back and saying, but I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And I really didn't mean it. I was, stressed or whatever it is that I was, and let's have this conversation again. So being able to repair relationships quickly before that, that wall that we're talking about starts building. Because when you have drama, the first thing is, whatever conflict erupts, if it goes out of the effective zone, then what happens is, if we are not able to go back and say we are sorry quick enough, then a wall starts forming. That place starts hardening, and repairing that is not so easy. So I think I will end there. I think I've spoken a lot, and I want to say that emotion, not reason, is where values that govern our behavior come from. And if you think about that for a minute, it means it's where our parenting comes from, and our ability to react and not to respond, sorry, and not to react to emotions means that we are then being able to choose differently. So with that, I want to hand it back to you, Steve. And I'll leave this on the screen, a final reflection. Steve, are you there?
Thank you so much,
I have a
Vicky.
question.
Yes, go ahead and
I have a question.
go ahead, Rehab.
Okay, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher at junior school, and there's of a public school. And so not okay. I have an issue with my grade 8 learners who are. I have like 5 or 6 students who are non-readers. They don't know. They cannot read anything. Even they cannot even write. And you find that when they're in class, they're the one who are disturbing so much. Like even when you try to give them some work, like for example, you can tell them to write some notes when you are teaching because there's nothing they will understand and there's nothing they are going to hear. They are so disturbing. Like maybe 99% of the time they are just disturbing you, and I feel like sometimes I feel so angry. I feel like I don't know what I can do to them. Like they make me to feel so angry. I don't know how to solve it. And then I also um these students don't finish their homework, and it reached a time I told myself that I think I'll not be checking their homework. I'll be giving them and not be checking, so that at least I'll not get angry, because it is a trend everywhere. Like in all the junior schools, they don't finish their homework, and I feel like I sometimes get angry, and I want to be assistant on that.
Okay. Rehab, put your email. I don't think I can give an answer, a short answer to that. Give me your email on the chat. I will reach out to you. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. There were some questions in the chat box. Let me see whether I can trace them. I'm seeing. But you've responded to a number of them. But there are two specific ones that I picked. And as I look for them, anybody who has a question, there's somebody called user. Please unmute and go ahead. User, your hand is raised. Okay. There is a question here. Let me read it. I don't know whether you might have seen it. I need help on understanding how to honor a very difficult narcissistic mother who has frustrated all her children's efforts to honor her and my father. I want to honor, but I have taken a step back because my mental health comes first. I have young children, but our mother continues to hurt us in our adult life. Then she plays victim when her own traps or issues turn on her. Kindly help.
Wow, that is such a again, that's a question I don't think I can give an answer. Uh, just a simple answer to. Those are very deep things. And one of the things you'll find is that your own mother also went through some traumatic, whatever it was, thing that shaped the way that she shows up today. And sometimes, no matter what you do, some people will not change. And so you start creating a boundary around them. And I think that's what you've done. You've created a boundary around them and said, hapa ndo mpaka yangu imefika. And of course, you keep breaking that boundary, going to her and then coming back. And an answer to those to such a situation sometimes is not as simple as telling you, "Oh, go do this," because there's a lot going on there. But definitely some help is required. That's not something you can handle alone. My mother, and I'm not really comparing this to her, was also a negative woman. And in that, like, I would meet her, and the first thing she would do is complain about all of us children and things like that. To the point we would go to a function and I would see her and I would, say a very quick hi and then leave. because I knew she was going to grab me, and then I was going to go down, down, down into all the things that are going wrong in our family, my firstborn. And it reached a point where she would call and I would never pick her calls. In fact, I'd be like, oh my goodness, she's calling again. But it took a conversation. And she cried and cried and cried. I cried and cried when we reached our end, and then we came to an understanding about how we're going to move forward. In fact, I remember I got so upset. I screamed. When I was telling you about bandwidth, mine had gone. So all the emotions came out and I cried and she cried. And the realization of what she had been doing suddenly occurred to her. So even now she says, I didn't know. But you see, so I'm saying it's not that simple. And this was her. I don't know, I wouldn't know the depth of that. Maybe I would say put your email also address and we can have a chat. But some situations call for a much deeper intervention. And usually the issue is, do you have the courage and the bandwidth to do that, to carry out that intervention to its end? Because again, you can't reach halfway. You have to commit to doing it. And if you do, then I think reconciling and honoring parents is something we should always be able to do. So I don't know what the name of that person, but if you put your email address now, I'll also reach out.
Thank
So
you so much.
expressing ourselves is very, very important in our needs.
Thank you. Thank you for those responses. There's somebody saying that you put back the slide on. I've lost the chat.
I will
but
share the slides, so you can share.
okay.
So you can share it with everyone who's come and even the ones who are not here.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone with any question, any comment? Please raise up your hand. We are finishing.
Okay, so I can see V Cavosa 20. Okay, I'll reach out.
Okay.
Maybe
Anyone?
I can ask. I'm asking if you could share the victim slide. If you could just show it, what type of victim slide? It should be the second last one, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the that's the comment I was looking for. Thank you so much. Again, if you want to be reminded of these webinars, we have them every month on various topics. Like on 19th, we have a webinar with, for those who attended, we had Honorable Justice Jackie Kibosia, who handled something on co-parenting, and there is something we did not finish. So she has given us a date on 19th. So 19th, we have another webinar again on parenting, touching on issues, the legal matters around co-parenting, blended families, child adoption, and all that. So again, I've shared the link to our WhatsApp group in the group, in the chat box. If you're not in any of our WhatsApp groups, feel free to join one so that you don't miss such sessions. Again, Elizabeth has been sharing what Vickie and the organization is doing. So feel free to also plug in. At Candid Hope, we believe that we grow together. When we bring facilitators to speak to us, we give them the opportunity also to share what they do so that we can also be part of what they do. So feel free to get in touch. We will also be sharing some flyers that are coming up from Vickie when they have a program. We'll be sharing it in our WhatsApp groups so that you can always plug in when you are able to. Otherwise, thank you so much for being available for this webinar. See you 19th. And there's something I'm sharing on the screen. Let me share before we leave. Where is screen sharing? It's lost. Yes, I've gotten it. So this program is coming up. It's facilitated partly by Dr. Mukolwe also by Honorable Judge Jackie Kibosia and a few others. So if you want to be part of this, feel free to reach out to us. You can take a screenshot. They are very interesting sessions. It's a 7 to 8 part series on those topics that have been shared there. And we look forward. People are already registering. So if you want to be part of this, feel free to register. Tomorrow we'll also share this flyer now in the group so that you can plug in, you can share with somebody. And again, this Saturday, we have a father-son retreat. That flyer we shared in the group. So if you know a father somewhere who'd want to be in a retreat with the daughter, not father-son, sorry, father-daughter, we are going to share that again in the group so that you can plug in if the father is available and you have a daughter for the specific age group. That is age 8 to 17. We'll do age specific sessions. Otherwise, we are grateful. Let me give Vickie 1 minute parting shot and then we finish there. Vickie.
Mine is just say thank you very, very much for being with me at this session, for listening in, and I do hope that this session has been of use to at least one or two people here. And thank you. I can see all the emojis. Thank you so much. And it's to say that we really do have a lot of control of our lives, as long as we are aware of our lives and the reasons why things happen. So it's to encourage you on whatever journey you're on, and to also leave a prayer for you. And God bless you only as He can, as you continue to navigate this wonderful world that He created for us. Thank you so much, Steve, for inviting me as always. And you also be blessed for the work that you're doing. Asante.
And Vickie, maybe somebody
Yes.
would love to invite you in their school to give such a session to a parents, to their chama to talk. How do they reach you if somebody
So,
wants to invite you?
yes, I think Liz has put our contact details there. But also you can reach out. There's an email. What I can do actually, let me give you my contact details, and then you can put them on the chat. Because now with this here, they'll get lost. Does that work? Steve,
Oh,
umepotea.
okay. Sorry, I was talking to myself. That's okay. You can actually type them on the chat directly so that
Oh, okay.
whoever is interested can pick it and follow up with you. Otherwise, thank you so much, dear parents. It's always a pleasure to host such webinars. We keep growing every day. See you on 19th when we'll have our next webinar with Honorable Jackie Kibosia and the next webinars. This is not the last time Vickie is here. Vickie will still come back. Amekuwa wetu. So thank you so much and God
Next
bless
one,
all
I'm
of us.
choosing the topic. I'll choose the topic.
Yes, please. Choose the topic.
I will. I want to speak. I don't know how many women are in business here. I really want to speak to women in business. That's something I also like speaking to.
All right, we already have a topic. So
Yes,
we'll
we
set
have a
a date
topic.
for it
Yes.
so that we can communicate.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. Allow me invite anyone, a volunteer to pray for us as we end this. Anyone?
Yes,
Just unmute. Yes, Elizabeth, go ahead. Thanks. No, was that Elizabeth or Irene or Jen?
I'm ready.
I had, okay. It's okay. Jen, go on.
Jen, go ahead.
Okay. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight. We thank you and bless your holy name. We want to thank you, Jehovah God, for bringing us together. We've learned a lot, and we pray, Jehovah God, that whatever we've learned, it can help us in our lives. We thank you for our facilitators. We thank you for bringing this topic. And we pray, God, for each and every family that has been listening here, and even on behalf of our children, grandchildren, and everybody else. We pray for our facilitators as well. We thank you and bless your holy name. And we pray that even as we break tonight, you may keep on, whatever we've learned, will keep on helping us in our lives. We thank you and bless your holy name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.